Hello everyone, this is Yu Xiaoping. Today we'll study episode 1 of the brief history of Chinese ceramics. China, a country with one of the most ancient civilizations in the world, has a time-honored history of making pottery and porcelain. From the perspective of development history of Chinese ceramics, the term ceramic is generally divided into two categories, pottery and porcelain. Generally, the products of clay and porcelain stone, which are not fully sintered, whether colored or white, are collectively referred to as pottery. Among them, the ones that are found at a relatively higher firing temperature and sintered relatively well is called hard pottery, and the ones that are applied with glaze is called glazed pottery. In contrast, the products of clay or porcelain stone that has been found at a high temperature with fully sintered body covered with glaze of good quality is called porcelain.
In the early Neolithic era about 20,000 years ago, potteries were invented on this great land, making China one of the first places to make and use potteries. The invention of pottery was the first creative activity that mankind began to change the characteristics of materials through chemical methods. It marked that mankind had transitioned from a migration life based on gathering, fishing and hunting activities to a settled life based on agriculture. It also signified the beginning of the transition from a barbaric state to a civilized state of mankind. In the middle of the Shang dynasty over 3,000 years ago, proto-porcelain, a product marking the transition of pottery to porcelain, came into being. Made of clay and fired around 1100 to 1200 centigrade. Its surface is fired to be glass-like, whereas its body becomes hard and delicate with low water absorption and would give off metallic sounds when struck. It is called proto-porcelain or primitive porcelain because the craftsmanship is still in a primitive stage.
The unity of China during the Qing and Han dynasties greatly boosted the development of ceramic art, which was mainly reflected in earthen sculptures, a spectacular accomplishment in Chinese art history. These accomplishments are best exemplified by the numerous life-size earthenware soldiers and horses buried in pits as part of the first emperor's tomb complex or necropolis, as well as numerous but smaller earthenware figures recovered thus far from various Han Dynasty burial sites.
Terracotta warriors and horses as well as earthen figures of the Qin and Han dynasties were masterpieces in the history of Chinese ceramic manufacture. Pottery wares became articles for daily use, and their shapes and patterns reflected the lifestyles, ideology and aesthetic interests of the Chinese people through the ages. Besides earthen sculptures, the other two important achievements of the Han dynasty were lead glaze potteries and celadon. The porcelain-like pottery. Lead glaze pottery was made by applying lead on pottery which was to be low fired, creating a glossy and smooth effect. The lead glaze potteries laid a foundation for the prosperity of tricolor glazed wares of the Tang dynasty. The other achievement was celadon. Along with the improvement of raw materials and firing and molding techniques in the Eastern Han dynasty was celadon that emerged from the primitive state and entered the early porcelain stage. The greenish tone of celadon became the most common colors, varied to different clay and firing temperatures, of early Chinese porcelains.
The Wei, Jin, and the southern and the northern dynasties witnessed the rapid development of porcelain production, with Greenwich porcelains as major ones. But in the northern China, the earliest white porcelain with a pure white texture and a smooth glaze appeared. Porcelain kilns were located in both the south and the north of China. Firing and modeling techniques became mature. The quality of porcelain wares improved greatly, and the quantity and types of porcelain increased sharply. In the Sui and the Tang dynasties, China was strong and prosperous with its opening doors to the outside world, and great progress was made in porcelains. In addition, the export trade accelerated the production of pottery and porcelain.
The tricolor glazed potteries of the Tang dynasty was a precious pearl of the Chinese art history. At that time it was customary to bury the deceased in an elaborate fashion. So the tricolor glazed pottery, which was used as a common burial object, became popular quickly. The Tang dynasty admired plumpness, and perfectly round, natural and smooth pottery and porcelain wares were produced as burial objects. The plumpness of figures represented on Tang tricolor glazed potteries and porcelain wares reflect the robust confidence of Chinese culture at that time. During this period, Celadon was represented by Yu ware in South China, and white porcelain by Shang ware in North China.
China made remarkable progress in porcelain making during the Song dynasties. The prevalent aesthetic interest of the Song dynasty, greatly influenced by Confucianism, pursued play and light beauty, and stressed an elegant, unsophisticated, and reserved art style, which were entirely manifested in porcelains of the dynasty. Such concepts were displayed by porcelains made by the 5 major kilns in the Song dynasty, namely Ru, Guan, Ge, Jun, and Ding. These kilns specialized in different techniques, glaze, shapes, and decorations. With simple shapes and without many decorations.
Other famous kilns included Longquan, Yaoju, Sizhou, and Jingdezhen. The jade-like porcelain wares made by the Longquan kiln were prized both at home and abroad. The Yaoju kiln featured richly varied decoration on celadon. The Sizhou kiln mainly made porcelains with black patterns on white background, decorated with figures of children playing, acrobats, and scenes of everyday life. The great progress in porcelain making in the Song dynasty put in the shade the accomplishments of the Tang dynasty's Yu and Qing kilns. Jingdezhen, a small city with beautiful natural scenery surrounded by mountains in southern China, began to rise to fame for its bluish-white porcelains. During the dynasty, the traditional Chinese ideology was already deeply rooted in porcelain production. What's more, almost all the emperors of the dynasty were scholars who sought for simple, slim and elegant beauties. In this background, the bluish-white porcelains made in Jingdezhen received special appreciation from rulers. In 1004, the former Changnan town was renamed Jingdezhen when the third emperor of the Song dynasty, Songzhenzong, bestowed his reign title on the city. The emperor might have not expected that his title would bring the small city everlasting world fame afterwards.